White Lotus Season 3 finished up a few days ago, and I let myself sit with the finale for a couple days, but there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about. So I'm going to make this video. I'm going to talk about the good things in the season. I'm going to talk about some of the bad things in the season, but I just want to start off by saying I'm a White Lotus fan. I'm a Mike White fan. I've been watching White Lotus since season 1. I watched Mike White on his season of Survivor, and I loved him. I think he's incredibly talented. But I do think that there's some issues with this season of White Lotus specifically that I didn't see in the other two. So we're going to talk about those a little bit today, but let's first talk about some of the good stuff about this season. So the first thing that really sticks out to me with this season is the cinematography. It is incredible. I think the other seasons have both looked great, but this season is just special. It really doesn't look like anything else on TV right now. I think that they chose to use some vintage lenses that have a little bit of a different bokeh, a little bit of a different blur in the background, and they shoot wide open all the time, so the background is always blurred. But I think that was a great decision. I think that White Lotus thrives on its characters, and this cinematography is lending itself to pulling us into the characters, focusing on them. Don't worry about the background. Don't worry about the incredibly beautiful location that they're in. Worry about them. Worry about the emotions, the things that are going on through their head. And so the cinematography really leans into that a lot of the time, focusing totally on the characters, blurring the background out, shooting wide open almost all the time. And I think that was a great decision. I think that, like I said, White Lotus thrives on when we're focusing on the characters and what they're going through. Not only is the cinematography work for the story, but I think it also just looks really interesting. I think the way they light this season is a lot different than the other ones too. I think a lot of the times they're using just maybe a big key light and that's it. No background, no fill light. But again, I think they're trying to just draw us into the characters and really make us focus on them a lot of time, put all the attention, all the light, all the focus, everything on them. And that leads me to the next point. I think the next great thing about this season are the performances. I think every actor in the show did a great job. You have the Ratliff family with their over-the-top Southern accents, and I know that that has been divisive online, but as a Southerner, I love the accents. I think that Parker Posey's fits her character perfectly. It's over the top and it's a little silly and maybe it's not quite realistic, but I think it just works really well for the character. And like, if you've met a Southern woman like her, that is just how they talk sometimes. They have these over-the-top accents that don't feel real and might not be real, but that's just how they talk. And I think that it really works really well for the character. I think that the dad in the family, don't remember his name, but I think that he gives an amazing performance. You see a full range of emotions in him. And I think that his accent is great too. After figuring out it was modeled off Thomas Ravenel from Southern Charm, which I have seen almost every season of, I think that he nailed it perfectly. There's some great compilations out there of the similarities between the things that they say in the show that are almost seems like Mike White pulled lines directly from Thomas.
Where is this goddamn coffee?
His coffee's on the way.
Excuse me, we ordered coffee?
Yeah, I'm ready for coffee.
Very particular about my coffee.
And I'm going to fucking prison?
They've already put me in prison.
Kenny, will you shut the fuck up?
Shut the up.
And I think that the kids all give great performances as well. I think everyone else in the show does a great job too. Walton Goggins does great. Everyone else that I don't know their names is great. But the performances of the show are really good. The actors do a great job bringing us in and just really making us feel like we're there, almost like we're eavesdropping on the couple next to us at dinner and hearing the problems that they have. And I think that the show shines because of that, because of the actors and how great their performances are. And that's the next thing, the last thing that I think is really great. I think the characters in this season of White Lotus are really interesting. I think that Mike White is really good at writing characters that feel real, even if the situation they're in doesn't necessarily. Like, it's a little over the top and dramatized, but they feel real, and that keeps the show really interesting. So specifically the group of 3 women, I feel like I've met them before. I feel like I've interacted with groups that have their exact same dynamic. And so I think that the characters in the show are all really well written. So the first thing about this season that I didn't really like were just some of the storylines that we focused on for a few episodes and then just let them fizzle out. And I think that there's value in doing that in a show like White Lotus. You know, White Lotus always starts with, you show that there's some sort of crime or some sort of crazy thing that's happened, then we go back in time and we work our way to that crime. And so I think that when you're doing a show like that, it's valuable to have these things that are kind of red herrings, or, we kind of go off for a little bit and then figure out that's not going to involve the crime at the end or something. But this season just felt like it was happening a lot. This season felt like there were a lot of things that we get that tension, we get that build up, and then we have the rug pulled out from under us. When that happens week after week after week after week, I think your audience, and I had this feeling, my wife had this feeling too while we were watching it, and some other people we know felt the same way, where the show just got frustrating to watch almost at a point, because there were so many things that, it's building up, we're finally gonna see this, and then the rug gets pulled out from under us, and either nothing bad happens, or they show us and it's not a big deal, or something that happens off screen and we don't even get to see it. We might see it in a flashback later or something like that. But there's too many like that. I mean, a couple examples. In the beginning of the show, it's this big deal. Belinda thinks that there's something in her room. There's someone looking at her. And I understand that this comes from her fear of Greg or / Gary, whatever. And she's seen him and now she's scared that he's going to do something to her. But there's like this building tension of there being something in her room, and it keeps coming and it keeps coming. And then it's just a lizard in there one time. And then that's never addressed again. And it's like that fear of Gary doing something in her room just dissipates, I guess, after that. That was a little frustrating. And then you have the storyline between the brothers and the Ratliff family, and you just see them kind of struggling to deal with this weird thing that happened. If you haven't watched the show, I'm not going to exactly say, but it's just something that shouldn't happen between two brothers. That's as far as we'll go. But they're kind of dealing with it, and then they have one moment in the finale for probably 30 seconds where they talk about it, and it's just kind of like, let's never talk about this again. And they don't really deal with it, and they don't talk about it.
Dude. Let's just drop this, like, forever, please. Okay?
And I think that it's really frustrating as a viewer to have this thing, and for 3 or 4 episodes, these brothers are trying to figure out how to deal with this and try to handle it. And the solution that the show shows us is they just don't ever talk about it again. And for me, that just wasn't interesting. It's just frustrating. And I understand that that might be in real life what happens, but in a show, just this big thing that has permeated throughout the entire season, and the solution for it is in the finale, just a 30-second thing, and then they say, we just won't talk about it ever again. It's pretty frustrating. It's pretty frustrating as a viewer to see that. And I think that happened a lot this season. A lot of stuff happened off screen, or we saw a small second of it, or there's just a lot of storylines I felt like that just ended up leading nowhere. And so I think that while it's okay, and while a show like this should have these storylines that are red herrings or don't end up going anywhere, all these different things, I think that there were just too many this season, and it became frustrating to watch at times because there were so many. There were whole episodes dedicated to them at some point. So that kind of leads me to my next thing about this season that I didn't really enjoy, was the pacing. I felt like the pacing of this season was just really off. It felt really slow at times. It felt like we were building up to something that was going to be great, and we're taking our time, and that's fine. I'm here for a slow build. I'll take a slow build, but I think when you build something up so slowly, you're building an expectation in your audience's mind that the ending is just going to be that much crazier. And I don't think the ending of this season lived up to that slow build. I think that if this season had pacing closer to the other 2 seasons of the show, I think that I probably would have enjoyed the ending a lot more. But for me personally, just felt like we were building up really slow. And so I have this expectation that we're going to have this over the top crazy ending. The ending was crazy. There's a shooting at the resort this season, but it felt very similar to the endings of the other seasons. And so the fact that the pacing was so much slower and the ending was so similar and didn't take an extra step or go a little bit further than the other ones, it just felt like it kind of fizzled out at the end for me. And so I think the pacing for me really just messed with the way I was feeling about the show. I'm expecting that I'm getting through some of these episodes that, quite frankly, not a lot happens, thinking that this is just building, this is slowly building for a finale that's really going to knock my socks off. And In the end, it just didn't, you know? I thought it was interesting. I thought it was a good finale, but just not what I was hoping for, especially with how slow the season was moving. I think if I watched White Lotus Season 3 in a binge format, I would not feel the same about the pacing. I would not think it was as slow. But because I watched it week by week as it was released, I really had this problem with this pacing. And I think that this is an issue we're seeing because I think there are streaming services that are moving to these week by week models, but the shows are not being made and edited for week by week models. At the end of the day, I think White Lotus Season 3 is good. I think that you should watch White Lotus Season 3. I'm excited that Season 4 is coming. I'm excited to see where Mike White takes the show, and I'm excited to hear what you thought about Season 3 of White Lotus. If you watched it week by week and you totally disagree with me, let me know in the comments. If you're gonna binge it after it's come out, please let me know what you thought about the pacing and how you felt about it. I think that's an interesting conversation we can have going forward on this channel, talking about the binge model versus week by week and seeing how, you know, it can really affect and change how you view a show. If you like this video, like it. If you wanna see more from me or my brother Zach in the future, subscribe. And then go check out our film Squatter. We released our short film Squatter that we made for last year's 48-hour film festival. And it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun making it. We've had a couple videos come out about making it, but go check that out and leave it a like too. So thanks and see you next time.